3 days chained to a tree in the heart of a frozen forest, bleeding, forgotten, left to die. No food, no water, no hope. But just as his heartbeat began to fade, shadows emerged from the snow. 5 German shepherds in tactical formation, eyes burning with purpose. What they did next would not only save his life, but uncover a secret so dangerous, it could bring down the most powerful man in the state. The snow had fallen without pause for 3 days, thick curtains of white swallowing the ancient pines and coating the valleys of Pine Ridge in a silence that felt almost holy. But for Jamal Rivers, that silence was nothing short of a death sentence. He was chained to a tree, iron links biting into his chest and arms like the jaws of some prehistoric predator. His ranger uniform, once a proud green, was torn and darkened with frozen blood. Each breath he drew was ragged and shallow, exhaled in clouds that dissolved instantly in the punishing cold. His lips were cracked, his eyelids swollen, his skin mottled in shades of gray and blue. 3 days. That's how long he had hung there against the trunk of the oak, the bark digging into his back as if nature itself had turned against him. And now, as the third night crept over the reserve, Jamal knew with grim certainty that he would not survive a fourth. The words of the hooded man still rang in his ears, cruel and mocking. "You should have kept quiet when you found out about our business. Now you're going to rot here like another statistic." Jamal had spent 15 years in these woods. He knew every trail, every trickle of water, every den of foxes and every nesting hawk. His job was to protect the land from poachers, careless hikers, and wildfires. He had prepared himself for the dangers of blizzards, mountain lions, even the occasional bear, but never for betrayal by the very men sworn to defend this wilderness. It all began with the documents. Hidden files buried in the reserve's digital system, forged licenses, fake permits, falsified signatures authorizing massive illegal logging deep in the protected heart of Pine Ridge. The names on those papers belonged to officials and rangers he had worked beside, men who once shook his hand with false smiles and called him brother. At the top of it all, Director Lawrence Preston, a decorated ex-military man with friends in the governor's office and enemies buried under the weight of his connections. Jamal hadn't been meant to find those files, but once he did, his life became a countdown. The ambush came fast. 3 men, their faces covered, their fists and boots merciless. They dragged him out to the old oak, locked chains around his body, and left him to the blizzard. No food, no water, just the cold. And yet, as darkness bled into the sky and the snow whispered down around him, Jamal still clung to the fire in his heart. He thought of his mother, who had raised him alone in a crumbling Detroit neighborhood. He thought of his late mentor, who had taught him that protecting the forest meant protecting the soul of the world. He thought of justice and the idea that the truth, however buried, always fought its way to the surface. But justice felt far away as numbness spread through his limbs. His fingers no longer obeyed him. His eyelids fluttered, heavy as lead. Soon, he thought, there would be no more pain, only stillness. That was when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the wilderness. Not the moan of the wind or the distant howl of wolves. It was rhythmic, deliberate, a measured crunch of snow beneath careful paws. At first, fear surged through him. Were the hooded men back to finish the job? His pulse spiked in panic, the chains rattling as he forced his head up, vision swimming. But through the blur, he saw them, 5 dark silhouettes weaving between the trees, moving in formation like soldiers. As they drew closer, he saw the gleam of official K9 unit vests. German shepherds, big, disciplined, purposeful. The leader, an imposing brute with a scar etched across his muzzle, locked eyes with Jamal. The ranger's throat closed. He had seen wolves, coyotes, stray dogs roaming these woods, but these were no ordinary animals. They carried themselves with the solemnity of warriors. The scarred shepherd stepped forward, slowly, calmly. It sniffed the blood-soaked chains, then lifted its head to study Jamal, and then, astonishingly, it barked once. Short, controlled, like a command. The others sprang into action instantly. One began digging furiously at the snow around the oak, clearing the frozen ground. Another stood watch, scanning the tree line with a vigilance that felt almost human. 2 more inspected the chains, nudging and pawing as though they could find the weak point. Jamal tried to speak, but his voice was no more than a ghostly rasp. "How a broken bar do you?" "A broken bar?" The scarred dog tilted its head, amber eyes gleaming with something deeper than animal instinct. Understanding, recognition, as if it saw in Jamal a soul scarred like its own. And then, cutting through the forest, came the sound of engines and human voices. Searchlights pierced the night. A tactical team in heavy coats emerged, following the path the dogs had carved. Jamal felt his body give way to the relief that swelled inside him. Against every calculation, against every attempt to erase him, he had been found. The last thing he remembered before collapsing into unconsciousness was the scarred dog's face inches from his own, its breath warm against his frozen skin, amber eyes refusing to leave him behind. When Jamal next opened his eyes, it wasn't the forest that greeted him but blinding white light. For a moment, he panicked, thinking he had slipped into the afterlife. But then came the noise, urgent voices, clattering instruments, the constant beep of monitors. The oxygen mask pressed against his face carried the sharp bite of sterilized air. He was alive, against every law of nature, every medical probability. He had survived severe hypothermia, critical dehydration, frostbite on the extremities. Someone called out over the chaos, "Prep for immediate warming protocol. Keep his airway stable." Hands moved quickly over him, cutting away the frozen remnants of his uniform. The sudden rush of warmth burned as much as the cold had, and Jamal cried out, the sound muffled under the mask. His consciousness flickered, fading in and out like a candle in the wind. Through the haze he caught one last image before blackness claimed him again, a German shepherd, the scarred one, being held back by a female officer at the entrance to the emergency ward. The dog's amber eyes never wavered from him, as if promising, "I'm still here, I won't leave you." 36 hours later, Jamal woke again. This time the world was calmer. A quiet hospital room, the soft, steady rhythm of the heart monitor. He was swaddled in bandages, every muscle aching, but alive, truly alive. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a woman with kind eyes and a clipped professional tone, leaned over his bed. "You're one stubborn man, Mr. Rivers. Most don't survive 3 days chained outside in sub-zero temperatures. Your body should have shut down completely, but somehow, it didn't." Jamal tried to sit up, but his body screamed in protest. "The dogs," he croaked, his voice brittle. "Who trained them?" Dr. Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. "The Special Canine Unit. Extraordinary animals. Their commander should be here soon. She hasn't left the corridor since you were admitted." As if on cue, the door swung open. The woman who entered was as striking as she was disciplined. Brown hair pulled into a severe military bun, eyes like sharpened emeralds, her uniform pressed with precision. But Jamal's gaze fell to her side, where the scarred German shepherd stood at perfect attention. "Sergeant Diana Webb, Special Operations Canine Unit," she introduced herself formally. "And this is Titan." The dog sat beside her, posture erect, ears forward, eyes fixed on Jamal as if cataloging every detail of his condition. "He practically refused to leave this room," Diana added, her voice softening slightly. "I had to drag him out of the Jamal's throat tightened. He reached out a trembling hand, and Titan moved forward, resting his broad head against Jamal's fingers with a gentleness that undid him. For the first time in days, the ranger felt tears well in his eyes. "How a broken bar. How did you find me?" Jamal asked. Diana hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Officially, it was part of a routine search and rescue exercise. We were mapping new terrain. Unofficially a broken bar." She exhaled, her composure cracking for just a moment. "I've never seen anything like it." Titan ignored all commands, left the programmed route, and led us 8 kilometers off course, straight to you. No hesitation, no error. Their eyes met. Jamal felt the unspoken truth pass between them. This was no coincidence. "I have a story to tell you," Jamal said at last, his voice steadier than before. "And you're not going to like it." For the next hour, behind a closed door, Jamal laid everything bare. The forged permits, the forged signatures, the photographs of secret meetings between Director Lawrence Preston and corporate executives infamous for destroying protected lands, the threats that escalated until he was chained to a tree and left to die. When he finished, the room was silent. Diana's face was carved from stone, but her eyes flickered with barely restrained fury. "They left you to die because you're the only witness," she said at last. They think they erased me, Jamal replied bitterly. Preston a broken bar. He's untouchable. Decorated, politically connected, friends with the governor himself. When I confronted him, he laughed in my face, told me to remember my place. 3 days later, I was in the forest. The door opened again, and Jamal's heart stuttered at the sight of the man who entered. Tall, immaculately groomed, gray hair perfectly in place. A gold badge gleamed on his pristine uniform. Lawrence Preston himself. Ranger Rivers, Preston said smoothly, his smile as polished as his shoes. I can't tell you how relieved we are that you survived a broken bar accident. The entire reserve staff has been devastated. Diana rose instantly, her body forming a shield between Preston and Jamal. Titan emitted a low, dangerous growl that vibrated through the floor. Preston's eyes flicked to the dog, then back to Jamal. Our brave guard, alive against all odds. The governor is eager to honor you, Sergeant Webb, for this remarkable rescue. Truly commendable work. A recognition would be appropriate, Diana said coldly. Considering how convenient it was that we found him. Preston's smile faltered, just for an instant. Then it returned, sharper. Rivers needs rest. Trauma like this can affect memory, confusion, paranoia. Perhaps it would be best if you considered early retirement, Jamal. Disability benefits, a generous package. Jamal's pulse spiked. He understood the threat perfectly. Take the money. Keep quiet, or disappear for good. Preston adjusted his cufflinks with practiced ease. I'll inform the press of our joy at your recovery. By the way, the autopsies of those 3 activists last month, tragic accident. Everyone agrees. Case closed. And then he was gone, leaving behind a silence heavy as stone. Jamal's voice trembled. He just threatened me in front of witnesses. No, Diana said, her jaw tight. He just showed us he thinks he's untouchable. Neither of them noticed the 3 men standing outside the hospital, disguised in maintenance uniforms. One of them checked the gun hidden under his jacket. A voice on their radio, Preston's voice, whispered, tonight, no witnesses this time. But Preston had underestimated 2 things. What happens when a man who has already lost everything decides to fight back? And what happens when a dog chooses loyalty not because it was trained, but because it understands? That night, the hospital grew quiet. Most patients were asleep, nurses moving silently through the halls. In room 304, Jamal pretended to rest, the steady beep of the monitor his camouflage. At the foot of his bed, Titan lay still as a statue, ears pricked, eyes fixed on the door. They'll come for you tonight, Diana had warned. Hiding in the adjoining bathroom, her gun loaded, Preston cleans his tracks. But we're ready. What Preston didn't know was that Jamal had more than testimony. He had evidence. For months he had hidden recordings, photographs, documents, all buried in a waterproof container at the base of a century-old sequoia. Proof that could burn Preston's empire to the ground. The truth has to come out, Jamal had told Diana, even if I don't make it. At 2:17 a.m., Titan's ears twitched. His body stiffened, a low growl vibrating in his chest. The lights in the corridor flickered once, then went out. A second later, the emergency system buzzed to life, bathing the hall in ominous red. Footsteps, soft, deliberate. The doorknob turned. Titan melted into the shadows, invisible in the corner. Jamal forced his heartbeats to remain calm, feigning deep sleep. The door opened. A nurse stepped in. Behind him, 2 maintenance men, all unfamiliar faces, all with eyes too sharp, movements too precise. The nurse checked the monitors, nodded. He sedated, make it look like respiratory failure. One man pulled a syringe from his bag. The other blocked the doorway. They didn't see Diana waiting in the shadows. They didn't see Titan coiled like a spring. Full dose, the nurse whispered. Preston wants no mistakes this time. That was all Diana needed to hear. The moment the syringe rose toward Jamal's fore, Jamal's hand shot out, seizing the man's wrist with iron strength. His eyes blazed open. At the same instant, Diana burst from the bathroom, weapon raised. Federal police, freeze. Titan launched himself across the room, slamming the second man to the floor with bone-rattling force. The third drew his pistol, but before he could fire, another German shepherd barreled through the half-open door, clamping down on his arm with surgical precision. The room exploded into chaos. Shouts, snarls, the metallic clatter of weapons hitting the floor. Within seconds, the three attackers were pinned and disarmed, cuffed by plainclothes federal agents disguised as hospital security. Diana held up a small recording device. "We've got everything, including your admission. You're acting under Preston's orders." The nurse, blood trickling from his lip, smirked. "You think that matters? Preston has friends in the governor's office, in the courts. He's untouchable." Diana's phone buzzed. She answered, listened, then hung up. "Correction, Preston has just been arrested trying to flee the state with $2 million in cash and a false passport." The man's smirk collapsed. Diana leaned close. "Looks like he was planning to abandon you too. Classic Preston." But even as the words left her lips, another call came through. This time her expression darkened. Preston had escaped custody. 2 agents were down, and he was coming.